how does Dricus keep winning? And not only winning, he has outstruck Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya, and Robert Whittaker, who are supposed to be the best strikers in the weight class, and Dricus is outstriking these guys. The unorthodox style of Dricus Du Plessis may be one of the most effective fighting styles in MMA right now, or certainly in the middleweight division, right? And there seems to be two different kinds of opinions about it. Some people think that the middleweights just aren't good, and that's why Dricus is able to beat them like this. But then the other opinion is, no, the middleweight division is good. It's just that Dricus is an anomaly. He fights in a way that he shouldn't be beating the best fighters in the world, but he's effective enough with that fighting style to win. And he's well-rounded enough as well. But against Sean Strickland here, he didn't need his wrestling as much as he did the first time. In the first fight, Dricus was mixing up his striking with his wrestling, and that was offsetting some of Strickland's offensive striking skills. But here, he wasn't shooting takedowns as much, and Strickland was still throwing less punches. He threw less punches in this fight than he did the first time. As to why that is, we have no idea. I mean, even his corner was telling him every round to throw more, and he just wasn't. Like the commentators said, it looked like Strickland was frustrated with himself, that he wasn't throwing as much as his corner is telling him to do. There were a few moments where he was throwing the right straight or an overhand in the 5th round. And the thing is, whenever Strickland had higher volume and throwing his power punches more, he was landing those power punches. He was actually very effective when he was throwing more punches. But it's just Sean Strickland's style. This is how he normally fights. He's a very defensive striker. He likes to fight behind his jabs and teeps. And that just gave Dricus the control of the fight. Like, Dricus can control the pace and the distance. Now, Dricus was missing most of his punches, but when you're so defensive in MMA, eventually some of those power punches are going to get through. That's why the overhand broke Strickland's nose. Dricus went forward with his chin in the air, and Strickland countered with a jab. This impacted Dricus' precision of his own punch, throwing that punch in the sky. But then Strickland angled to his left with his left hand down. Strickland doesn't usually keep his hands down like that. And Dricus fires through the opening with the right overhand, breaking Strickland's nose. Strickland did put it in place in the middle of a fight, which is crazy. It shows how tough Strickland is. But what were some of the techniques that Dricus was throwing out there that was effective against Sean Strickland? The most impressive technique, in my opinion, were the question mark kicks, because he was setting those up very well. The way he throws a body kick with the same kind of setup or chambering is how he throws a question mark kick. So throughout the fight, notice when he throws these body kicks at Sean Strickland, he lifts the knee upward. He's not bringing the leg across from the side. He's bringing his knee up and then extends his kick into the body. This is the exact same startup when he's throwing a question mark kick to the head. Notice here, the knee comes up at the same angle and then around to the head to connect with the question mark kick. But Strickland usually was able to move his head away from the kick, getting away from the shin, but the foot of Dricus was landing in moments. Look at every startup of this kick. He's bringing the knee upward and you would think, oh, this is probably going up to the head. No, this is a body kick. But look at this. He raises his knee. It's a question mark kick to the head. It's the same exact startup. In my opinion, this is probably Dricus' single best strike that he throws. But then you look at him lunging forward with the jab from distance, lowering his hand chin up in the air, and I think his opponents respect his power so much that they don't try to counterpunch him because there's a clear opening for counterpunches. And the thing about Dricus is he's a lot more open to counterpunches, but fighters want to punch at his guard a lot more. Maybe it's because they respect the power so much that they have to move away from when he's throwing punches. But when he's in the center of the octagon, a lot of fighters just like to throw punches at his guard, and it's difficult to land some of the shots because his arms and shoulders are like comically big enough where it covers so much surface area of his head compared to the average fighter. The jabs can get through the center, which Strickland did land throughout the fight, but fighters don't really want to counterpunch him as much, where that's where most of his defensive openings are, not in the center of the cage where he's picking up his guard, because he's very good at picking up his guard. A lot of punches are bouncing off his hands, bouncing off his shoulders, and he moves in a way where he is blocking the punches. Like here, when Strickland throws a jab, Dricus picks up that right guard and slightly angles to the left, making the punch deflect off of his right hand. But Dricus has very good spinning back kicks to the body. He throws a lot of those. And the way they throw spinning back kicks is very similar to the way Max Holloway throws them. It's not a turning side kick, it is more of a spinning back kick because he's not taking a step and then turning sideways. He's like hopping forward and then throwing a back kick instead of a side kick. Very effective technique, and he threw it many times throughout the fight. And it's crazy with the amount of kicks that he's throwing like this, from body kicks to question mark kicks to exploding with combinations, and he doesn't gas out. I think he's more technical with the way he throws his kicks than he does his punches. But of course, he throws a lot more punches than kicks, so those are going to land more often. But there was a moment in the fight where Strickland landed a good counterpunch. As Dricus was blitzing forward, he tries to bring down the left hand of Strickland, so taking away his measurement of range. So he throws a left hook, greatly telegraphing his punches and lifting his chin. And when Dricus is bringing down the right arm of Strickland, he throws a right overhand and Strickland moves away from the punch. Dricus overextends from his combination, and when Strickland lands in the southpaw stance, he counters Dricus with a power jab, snapping his head back. These are the kind of counterpunches that the fighters need to use against Dricus in order to beat him, but they're always few and far between, even though Dricus gives a lot of openings for counterpunches. And this is a very interesting moment from Dricus. So it looks like he was trying to go for a pull counter where he slips back slightly on his left. He changes his levels though, and it looked like he wanted to counter punch by throwing the left hand, but he doesn't throw a punch. His fingers are extended. He was reaching forward in this kind of stance. I don't know what he was doing because he didn't reach forward for a punch. His fingers are extended. He has his right arm where he's like defending his right side, but his upper body's angled clockwise. He's overloading on his right hip. His hand is like 1.5 feet from Strickland's head, so obviously he wasn't throwing a punch, right? But was he trying to establish reach to push Strickland away? I don't know what he was doing in the sequence, but because you don't usually want to reach with just your power hand because it's further back. He's in southpaw, so his right hand would be the one to establish reach, not his power hand, which is further back. And yeah, I don't know. This is like one of those Dricus moves that only he understands. But then again, he might not even understand the moves that he uses. So you do see Strickland also reaching with both of his hands. That is establishing reach, as it looks like he also reacted as if Dricus was throwing a counterpunch. And the way Strickland reaches with both of his hands is also something he did throughout the fight. It's a technique called the mummy guard, where you're extending with both of your hands forward, occupying the hands of your opponent. So where Dricus has moments like this where you don't really know exactly why he was throwing out these techniques, he would have very technical moments where he slightly pulls away from the punch, parries the jab of Strickland, and counters over it with the right straight. And also Dricus sometimes would block the teep from Strickland, and Strickland's throwing that front kick to the body. Dricus hops forward with his left knee up, deflecting the kick off of the knee past his body. He goes to grab both of Strickland's hands so Strickland couldn't counterpunch him. But Strickland was also doing the same thing as well, because Dricus missed grabbing Strickland's right hand, but because Strickland's leaning back, Dricus throws a leg kick. Look at the way that both of them throw punches in this exchange. So Dricus switches into the southpaw stance, and he gets under Strickland's jab, but gets his eyes off of his opponent, eyes to the ground, throws a left overhand. Strickland's able to get his head on the inside of the punch. Strickland changes his levels. He might have reacted as if Dricus was shooting a takedown, but then Dricus raises his levels and throws a right hook, lifting his right foot off the mat, chin up in the air, balancing on one foot in the pocket. But then look at the counter punch from Strickland. The form of his arm is nearly straight as he's throwing it. There's like no arc in that punch, and he lands it to the chest of Dricus, and Dricus could not defend this punch at all. He got himself so off balance, arms down, chin in the air. Strickland just missed the punch because he also wasn't seeing where he was throwing the punch. So in this moment here, Dricus is covering up in front of Strickland, and Strickland fires down the jab through the opening in the center, laying that punch on Dricus, but then he follows up with a right straight, and Dricus switches stances backwards diagonally at a left angle. He gets into southpaw, picks up his left guard, and extends with his right hand to measure for range, getting away from Strickland's right straight, and he hops away almost like in a shoulder roll fashion. Like, there are moments where Dricus actually has good technique, but the times where he doesn't have great technique, it's very clunky, right? It's like very Looney Tunes fashion, but there are moments throughout the fight where he has good technique. Dricus would also look at Strickland's legs. His eyes are at Strickland's legs, while he pulls with his left arm to measure for range as he's switching to throw a left kick. But Strickland saw the kick coming up high. Dricus was trying to trick him into thinking it was going to be a low kick, get Strickland to drop his hands so he can land the high kick to the head. But then Dricus does it again, so he moves away from the jab and then looks down at Strickland's legs again. Doesn't switch this time, but he throws a right kick, and for a split second, Strickland thought it was going to be another high kick. You can see how he lifts his right hand to his left side to guard his head. But Dricus this time actually throws a leg kick instead, because Strickland throughout the fight had good leg kicking defense. But moments like that, Dricus was able to land his leg kicks. Like here, for an example, a few seconds after that, Dricus thrown a switch kick to the leg. And the way that Strickland defends against it is by checking the kick with his right foot. He brings his right foot up and pushes it at Dricus's knee. Not the usual way you see fighters check kicks, but in a Dricus and Strickland fight, there's going to be a lot of creative techniques, innovation of new moves to use, and I wonder if any fighter is going to be doing that instead of checking with their own shin or knee. Just bring the foot up at the opponent's knee and they can't kick you. So that was the main event for UFC 312. Next pay-per-view is UFC 313, which should be a very good card. And we have a sponsor for this video regarding the UFC card. This video is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm and now an official partner with the UFC. And just like the athletes fight in the cage, Morgan & Morgan will fight for you if you need them for any kind of personal injury case. Morgan & Morgan is giving away 2 tickets to the Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev fight in Las Vegas, plus $2,000. You get a chance to win by going to morganufc.com, a dream for any UFC fan. And all you have to do is click the link in the description below or head to morganufc.com/weasel to enter the contest and to see if you can win. It'd be awesome to see you guys there. But at the end of the day, Dricus is very powerful. He's not slow either. He can land his own jabs from distance. Sometimes they're in good form, sometimes they're a bit crazy, but Dricus Du Plessis is a very, very good fighter. Whether his technique looks quote unquote ugly, it doesn't matter if he's effective with it, right? As long as the fighter is effective, that's all that matters at the end of the day. He's the champion, just won his second title defense, and he says he wants to be pound for pound #1 fighter in the world, but right now he's top 3. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. If you guys did, make sure to give this video a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Who should these fighters fight next? I think Dricus versus Hamza is the fight to make. Is Hamza really the best fighter in the weight class like a lot of people believe he is? Well, he's gonna have to beat Dricus, and this is also perfect for Nasruddin Imavov because Imavov says that at some point he wants to rematch Strickland. He's not happy about that loss to Strickland, so he wants to get that win again, and I think in the meantime, when you have Dricus versus Hamza, they could do Strickland versus Imavov maybe on the same card, and I'll see you guys in the next video.